Hello, and welcome to Prog and Progeny. Happy New Year, Tallulah.
Happy New Year. How was your New Year's Eve?
Stayed in, didn't do much. How about you?
Yeah, it was good. I saw the fireworks from a distance. I was in London.
Oh, well, in London, yeah. Where do they do them? On the embankment, is it?
Yeah. I was in Waterloo. There were loads of police around shouting Section 5 in the streets.
What does that mean?
Don't know. I don't think they knew, but they were just trying to clear the streets, basically.
Wow. Section 5. Okay, I'll listen out for that next time I'm in London. Causing a riot. Before you start the chapter, I'm just kind of decompressed from... I was just doing another video with Karina's sister. Her family... Karina's my wife. Her family are over from Brazil. I'm just saying that in case people don't know. And why would people know that her family are over from Brazil? Her sister does a Instagram...
people don't know.
She does a cooking Instagram which with 40-odd thousand followers. And she asked me if I'd make a recipe for her for the Instagram, and I did banoffee pie, which is kind of really easy, right?
Boring, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's what she wanted. So anyway, we did it just before this. So I'm just going to get my head out of banoffee pie world into podcast world.
I quite like a banoffee pie.
Ah, see, that's the thing. It's easy to make, and everybody loves to eat it. So what's not to like?
It's nice. I might make one. How do you make it again?
Okay, just get some digestive biscuits, crush them up in a tray with a bit of lemon juice and butter, just melted butter, just to form a like a base, you know,
Like
and
a
then
cheesecake.
Yeah, exactly, cheesecake type base, and then you spread a little bit of caramelized condensed milk, which you can buy already made. You don't have to do it yourself. Slice some bananas.
Did you do it yourself?
No, I just bought the ready-made stuff. Tastes the same. And then slice some bananas with the toffee, and then add a layer of cream on top and sprinkle some chocolate on it.
Fresh
and
cream.
There you go. Yes, whipped fresh cream.
That you've whipped yourself.
I did whip it myself, yeah. I whipped it good. You know that song by Devo? Getting back to music.
Who's Dave Megan?
Dave Megan. He is the producer of Brave and Afraid of Sunlight, and was our tape op or assistant engineer on Fugazi. He also mixed This Strange Engine, and I had an email from him about an hour ago, so the timing's great, because I messaged him a few days ago asking if he'd come on the podcast to talk about his time working with the band. He said he's happy to do it, and he's booked a session with his therapist for that week.
Good.
And he said let's do it. So the next issue, the next episode, we'll have Dave Megan on. Let's do it.
Okay. And who's Nick Mander?
Yeah, Nick Mander was our A&R man, which is basically A&R stands for artist and repertoire. We used to say it meant and-ah, you know, as in they couldn't make their mind up.
Right.
Their job back in the old days was like a talent scout. They would go out to gigs and clubs and try and find artists to sign. So, and then once they'd signed them, they were like the record company liaison between the artist and the record company, or the artist manager and the record company.
Right.
So Nick Mander was a brand new A&R guy who we'd never worked with before, young chap, and was very much into the sort of, at the time, it was kind of that early 90s, what was going on? Yeah, Britpop and all that sort of stuff. He signed the band EMF, which had a song called Unbelievable, back in the early 90s. So nothing to do with the sort of music that we make. So it was completely separate from what we were doing. But he'd worked with Dave Megan on a few of these little indie bands. And David worked really fast and done a great job. And we kind of knew Dave. Well, we knew Dave because he was our assistant engineer a few years before, 10 years before on Fugazi. So when he suggested Dave Megan would be our producer, we thought, great, we like Dave, and why not? So he thought Dave was going to do a really fast job and get a kind of modern sounding Marillion album that would be up to date and punchy and raw and quick. And we thought that we were going to make this sprawling concept album. Exactly. So we had, and David worked with.
Board was with that.
Yeah, because he'd worked with Yes, and he'd worked with U2, and a few other bands that would kind of more associated with the sort of music that we liked. So we liked the idea of Dave, and he liked the idea of Dave, but for different reasons. So and
we're jumping ahead. So the web magazine, the chapter starts with the formation of the web.
I'm drinking beer,
which we've recently been featured in.
The web magazine. That's right. We had 10 or 11 pages. Wow. How does it feel to be in the press, Tallulah?
Yeah, well, I came across as quite money motivated.
Well, you are, so that's fine.
That's Fraser twisting my... No, I'm joking. We had a really nice chat with Fraser.
Yeah. No, it was...
Yeah, it was a good article. I read it. It was good.
Yeah, it was. I liked it. So, where should we start?
The web magazine. I've just brought it up.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so that's right.
How many beers are you having?
I had half a bottle.
You don't normally drink while we film the podcast. Also,
no, I don't.
For the listener, it's only 4 p.m.
Well, it is a holiday. It is a Saturday, and we are still kind of celebrating New Year.
So you're not doing dry January?
Yeah, I will. Just a little bit.
A soggy January.
No, it's a good idea, actually. I think I will have a few weeks off, actually, after today.
Okay. After today.
Yeah. So, yeah, the web, we started that in 1982, which was basically, as I said in the chapter, it was just a A4 sheet of paper, really, with the news of what gigs we were playing. And that was pretty much it. It was just a way of getting the word out of what we were up to in our own very limited way. But we called it the web, nothing to do with the internet, obviously, back in 1982, because of the song The Web, which was on our first album. Before it was a magazine, it was just a sheet of paper, and it was our gig guide, really, of what we were up to. It was early 82, I think, not long after I joined the band.
Okay, but it was 92 when you started selling live.
Yes, yeah. The internet web started in 1993, and we started selling bootlegs at gigs in 1992, I think it was.
Right.
So, and that was kind of the beginning of our independence, where we didn't know it at the time, but that was our first step into becoming, a self-run business, if you like, rather than relying on a record company. Because if you scroll forward to 2001, when we did the first crowdfunding album, we already had our little Racket Records thing set up. In 1992, we played a gig at the Borderline Club and recorded it, and with the kind of, not the agreement of the label, but they kind of decided, they agreed they would turn a blind eye to the fact we were in breach of our contract by releasing our own bootleg recordings.
Why do you think they agreed to that?
I just think they probably just thought it didn't really matter, like it was no big deal for them. It's not like we're going to be taking sales away from our regular albums, because everybody who buys one of these bootleg recordings would almost certainly buy everything else we release as well. So, we're only selling to the hardcore fans. We're not taking sales away from EMI. So I think that's why they were fine with it. But for us, it was, and that, that's the point I was making in the chapter, is at the time we didn't realise how important that was going to be. And when people tell their story, they kind of not rewrite history, but try and make it sound like it was all planned and inevitable, and but really looking back, it wasn't. It was just, we just got 10 years down the line and we realised, okay, now we're going to be doing this crowdfunding thing, but we've got a history of selling bootleg recordings to the fans. It was only like a few thousand copies of each, but it showed us that we could do it. It showed us that we could have this, a little cottage industry, an online business,
Yeah.
selling stuff. So it was important, but we didn't realise at the time how important it would become.
And then you've started recording Brave in France.
So the story there was we knew this chap called Miles Copeland, who is Stuart Copeland's brother, and he managed the Police and manages Sting. And the reason we knew him was because he ran a record label in the States called IRS. And we were signed to IRS around about that time. So he was like, hey guys, why don't you just record your album in my chateau? And we were like, yeah, okay, why not? But it wasn't really a studio, it was just a chateau, not, he just happened to own a chateau. The guy was rich. And it was in kind of a half refurbished state. The guy had been, Miles had been working on it as a project for a number of years, refurbishing in it and spending a bit of time there himself and gradually making it nicer, buying furniture and doing the place up. So I think he was just kind of like, yeah, you can go there. It was huge, like a proper castle. But we needed to take everything with us. So we took all of our gear plus a kind of portable recording studio setup. But we didn't have a recording studio setup, so we bought one. So we said to EMI, because they pay us in advance for each album, and you would normally spend that on the recording. So you would normally, pay that in studio fees. But we said to them, well, could we use that money, instead of paying for a studio, could we use that money to buy some equipment that we can then take with us to France? And they agreed that we could. So, but of course then we owned that equipment and we could continue using it after we recorded the album. So that was kind of another really important step. We got the Racket Club around about that time, just before Brave. We bought the recording equipment. We'd started selling our own bootlegs. So it was all kind of moving towards being
anyway.
Exactly, being self-sufficient, being able to continue when we didn't have much money, and that was what was going to be in our future. We didn't know it for sure, but we could see that's the way things were heading. And for a lot of bands, I think that's the point where it just becomes impossible to continue. You can imagine, if you can't afford to pay for a recording studio, you don't have anywhere to work, you don't have anywhere to store your equipment, you don't have a rehearsal space, suddenly the band ceases to exist in any meaningful way. You can go out and play a few gigs, but if you then get dropped by your record company, which we did a few albums later, usually that's the end for everybody. But in our case, because we'd started to make these small steps to being independent, it meant we were able to continue. So it was, I'd like to say it was all carefully planned out, and we were being really clever and foresight, forward thinking. But it was more a reaction to the situation we found ourselves in each time, that we ended up where we did. Oh no, okay, yeah, we could have ignored the reality of our situation and then split up, but we didn't. So we were lucky.
Yeah. And so France is where you kind of started working with Dave Meegan then. He was producing.
So yeah, and I should say we'll talk to Dave about this next episode. And it's good because he also produced Afraid of Sunlight, which is the album after Brave. So we can discuss both of those albums. But from our point of view, working with Dave, right from the start, he was really as excited as we were about making a concept album. And we had this story to tell, and there was one point where we were getting a lot of shit from the record company because we were taking too long. And he was the one that said, "Are we making a work of art here?"
Yeah,
and we said, "Yeah."
Do the accent. Do the accent.
"Are we making a work of art here?" And we said yes. And he said, well, then it'll take as long as it takes. And we can get him to do it next week.
Yeah.
So after that, we were like...
Which is like your... Apart from H, that's kind of been your thing the whole time, right? That you take as long as you like.
Yeah, I think it was a real turning point for the band because, you know, with Holidays in Eden, we had that stress and the tension of like H wanting to record, you know, or write songs quickly, and us wanting to take our time. But then by the time we got to Brave, we were all on the same page, and it was you know, it was a really exciting. We were just totally convinced we were making a work of art. We were convinced that we were doing something special, and we didn't care what anybody thought. We were so confident in what we were doing. Maybe.
Do you still feel that way now?
I don't think we would have made it if we weren't.
Were you going to say maybe too confident?
Yeah, maybe because it's not a commercially great album, and I've always said about Brave that it's greater than the sum of its parts. If you take any individual part of it, because there's lots of little parts that aren't really songs. They don't really add up to much on their own. They're kind of nice bits or, you know, interesting little section here. But when you put it all together, then it becomes something special. That's how it felt to me. So...
it was very technically complex by the sounds of it.
Lots of layers. Dave loved to record lots of different
you wrote
things.
that he had like a really good... like encyclopedic memory for everything, like
he did. He remembered every little thing.
Recording everything you did at that point.
Yeah, and he would work with like this, you know, very methodical. He was he was like a librarian when it came to knowing where to find any part or sound or something that we'd done in the past. And working with analog tape, it's not the same as working with a computer like it is now, where you can easily try different things, you can copy and paste, you can cut and edit as much as you want. It's so much easier now. Working with analog was much more challenging, and especially if you've got, you know, multiple layers of sounds. And Dave would record lots of different things. He was always up for experimenting, so we'd try lots of different things, and quite often, and he did this to everybody, and it wasn't just me, where you'd be in the studio and you'd be working on a part and you'd be recording, and then you're kind of exploring and trying to get the best version of whatever it is you're trying to do, but you haven't really figured it out yet. And then when you get to the point, you go, okay, I've got it now, let's do it. And you go, no, that's fine, so you can stop now. Because he didn't like you to be really sure of what you were going to do. He liked to have that spontaneity and the little accidents that happen when you're not really sure, you know.
Yeah.
What sets Dave apart from a lot of other producers is that he would go with the imperfect, happy accident rather than saying, okay, now let's play it again and get it really perfect, you know. And he'd want to keep everything, so you'd end up with layer upon layer of tracks. And he'd be going, oh no, you need to keep that because that's got this little bit that I love, and then there's this bit, and you know, somehow he had to mix it. So he'd mix it, and it always sounded great. I mean, he was great. He was a great mixing engineer. And in fact, we asked a really well-known engineer to mix one of Dave's songs. And I'm trying to remember which one it was. It might be Beautiful. No, it wasn't, because the guy gave up. He said it was a guy who mixed Tears for Fears, Sowing the Seeds of Love, or something like that. David Bascom. So it was David Bascom was asked to mix this track, and I'm not sure which one it was. He basically said, I've been working at it for 2 days and I can't get it to sound as good as the tape that you sent me by Dave, so I give up.
Ian was in Florida, living in Florida.
That's right, yeah. Ian, so, well, we went to France, and then we'd finished recording the drums by the time we finished in France. Was in France, and then he went home back to Florida, and stayed there waiting patiently for us to finish the rest of it. And we just carried on through the summer. It was fun. I really enjoyed making that album.
So was it your favourite album to make, do you think?
It was certainly up there, yeah. It was because it was such an enjoyable experience, having all that time to explore and try different things. And Dave was always great to work with because he was very creative and really up for trying anything. And even when we were in France, we did some crazy stuff. Like me and Privet, there was a mine nearby. They were doing some mining. I don't know what it was. But you'd hear these explosions occasionally as they were blowing up the cliffside. So me and Privet had this idea we would go and record one of the explosions. So we took a portable recorder and microphones with us and went and kind of creeped up on this mine site and hid behind a hill with the microphones. So we positioned them on the ground as close as we could get without being seen.
Yeah.
And then the explosion happened. Boom. And we thought, great. And we took it back to the studio and listened to it. And all you heard was, you just heard nothing. The microphone just couldn't cope with the sound pressure. So it just went click. And then you heard the 2 seconds of silence and then a rumble as it died away. So the actual explosion was... No, but it just wasn't able to record it because we were too close.
And you met Mike Hunter.
That's right. Mike was the assistant engineer. He was there working in Parr Street, which is a studio in Liverpool.
Right.
He was working for the studio. So the connection there was we had Paul Lewis was our tour manager through the 80s and early 90s, and his wife was the studio manager. And they're all, Mike and Paul and Annie, his wife, are obviously all from Liverpool. So Mike was working in the studio, Paul's wife was the manager, and it was actually owned by Hit and Run, which is the management company that we were signed to. So it kind of made sense for us to go there. And so we got a decent rate, I think, from Hit and Run for the time we spent there. And that's where we met Mike. And then when we finished the recording, because we'd been there for 5 months, we kind of got to know him, and I offered him the gig of being my keyboard tech on the road, and he thought, oh, that sounds like a nice change from working in the studio. So he said, yeah, he'd do it, but I don't think he enjoyed it because it was so stressful.
Yeah, he nearly had a nervous breakdown, that's what he said.
Yeah. Well, my gear just kept breaking down. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk about that. Talk about being on tour with this album where it's like super complex to.
Yeah, but because of
live.
As I said with Dave, the way he recorded, and he would record so many layers of things, we couldn't possibly play it all. So, and we didn't want to use backing tracks. So the way you would do it is you would literally have the sample. Let's say it's a little guitar effect, a little thing like that. I would assign it onto a key on the keyboard. So while I'm playing, and I'd usually put it at the far bottom end or the far top end where I'm not likely to press the key anyway, and I would trigger it by hitting the key at the appropriate time. But it got to the point where there were so many samples, I couldn't remember which keys they were all on. I'd have like 20 or 30 different keys to press, plus the playing.
Yeah.
You could see how it could all go horribly wrong. So then I had the idea of giving some of the samples to Pete because he has some pedals that he plays. So I would assign the samples to his pedals, and he was much better at it than me actually. He would play, he would be playing the bass, singing, and triggering samples at the right time.
Impressive.
Yeah. So I'd be like, like a one-man band. Yeah. So if I didn't have the hands or the headspace, I would just pass it off to Pete,
Right.
So that kind of worked really well, except that, there was a lot of preparation and a lot of memorizing to do. And so, it was quite stressful. And the gear really wasn't quite up to the job,
Do you play Brave much now?
We've done it as a special one-off when we did... I think the very first weekend we played the whole of Brave. So on the tour, we played the whole of the album. So, which kind of went down great with some people, and some people were just a bit baffled.
Well, every
by the whole
gig
thing.
was just the whole album.
Yeah. We literally did the whole album to start, 70 minutes, start to finish,
That
and
would
then
be a bit of a crowd splitter.
yeah, because it's, you know, if you love the album, then that's great, and I think it's acquired a certain mystique, I suppose, because not everybody saw us do it on that tour.
Yeah.
So the first Marillion weekend, we played the whole of the album, and then we did it again, I think around about 2013. So we have done it since a few times, and we'll probably do it again at some point, because I think some people still really want to see us do the album.
But would you advertise it as Brave, the tour? Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a bad moment in Germany, right?
Oh my God, yeah, that was the worst gig of my life by far. Because we were playing a gig and it was being broadcast on the radio live.
Oh no.
And the main sampler, the machine that basically played all these samples I was talking about in Brave, I blew it up by accident in the sound check. So it was actually my fault. I didn't tell anyone at the time because I couldn't cope with the stress
you
as
knew
it
you'd
was.
blown it up before you.
Yeah, so there was a external hard drive with what's called a SCSI interface, SCSI. Can't remember what it stands for now. And I think I'd plugged the cable in the wrong way round or something like that. It shouldn't blow up from something as simple as that. Or I'd unplugged it while it was switched on, or plugged it in while it was switched on. Yeah. Something really, these days, just wouldn't happen. And it just fried the machine, and it refused to work. And it was
But you did
wasn't something
sound check.
Yeah, but you couldn't go and buy one. It was, they
So
were
what
quite...
did you do?
I played the gig without it, which was horrible. It means I was like, there was no samples, half my sounds were missing, so I was literally like trying to play all these nice,
oh my God,
complicated sounds, soundscapes with just a piano and an organ and some strings or something, and it was all going out live on German radio.
The way you were recording an album was changing.
The way we were writing, really. So
this is in Afraid of Sunlight or Brave? Or both?
It was kind of that period. So because we had our own studio finally, and recording equipment was of a price and a standard that we could use it for actual studio quality recording. Up until then, we would write songs by somebody, one of the band members would maybe come up with an idea and play it, and we play around it, and then work on it a bit, and then if it turned into something worthwhile, we'd record like a demo, like a rough song. But usually nothing would get recorded until it was something that resembled a song. You wouldn't just record an idea, you wouldn't just record a little I suppose maybe if you wanted to remember it, but we kind of didn't really have as much trouble remembering things back then as we do now,
Yeah.
So that was the writing process then. But round about Brave, we had this little, what was called a DAT machine. It was like a digital tape machine. And we were able to record the jams that were happening in the room. Mm-hmm. And that was literally the first time that we started recording our jams. And quite a few of those jams ended up as parts of Brave. And in fact, getting back to the Record Records thing, after we did that live at the Borderline and then live in Caracas, which were 2 albums of live gigs, the next thing that we did was I said, well, after we made Brave, I said, why don't we make a Making of Brave album, which is basically the jams that resulted in the songs further down the line, So because we had all the recordings, because we had all the recordings of the jams, I sifted through them all and went, okay, you can hear this jam became part of this song, and this jam became... So we put together a little 2-disc set of jams, really, which was called The Making of Brave. And people really liked it. It was kind of a little window into how we wrote our music. You could hear the embryonic ideas that became the songs,
Yeah.
So, and it sold really well. We would sell them at gigs on the Brave tour, and we probably made as much money from those CDs as we did from the gigs.
Really?
Yeah, because we weren't really making much from the gigs. It was kind of like a break-even tour, really.
Yeah. No, how did the album do in the charts?
I can't remember, but we didn't really. The singles, we had a couple of singles off the album that weren't really very single-like songs, so it didn't do very well. And our sales dropped considerably from Holidays in Eden as well.
Was that kind of? I guess you probably expected it, but was that hard?
Yeah, it did get to the point where we were constantly having to reassess our level of success, and where I don't know, it's not like at the time we were depressed about it, but it was just the reality that we were playing smaller places, and I think that was the time. Not Brave. The Brave tour was fine. It was a little bit later actually when things got really difficult, especially
Around the time that
financially
you
as
met
well.
Mum.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, 97. That was the low point, really, in terms of our financial viability. Yeah, I didn't own a house. I was living in Ian's house because Ian had, he was living in Florida, but he owned a house in Aylesbury and he lent me his house. So I was kind of not in the best of situations, really. None of the band were, really. I mean, it was a tough time. We could have very easily have split up if somebody had said, "Oh, you know what, I'm going to go and get a job." It could have been the end of us, But we were maybe we just had a irrational belief that everything was going to be okay, or we were just deluded. I don't know, really. It's hard to say. Okay, so before we go, Tallulah, how about I just give a quick shout out to our new members. We have El Warsop, Gilles Pinatel. Hello, Gilles, I know him. He's our little orchestral guy who did some choir arranging for us and some other bits and pieces. We have Lars Lundstedt and Alex Britwhistle and Will Leggett and Corso Laurent and Ralph Ray. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And we will see you in a couple of weeks hopefully with Dave Meegan.
Great. Thanks, Dad. And
Thanks,
Happy
Tallulah.
New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year.